Before we enter today's dark and chilling story, make sure to subscribe for more mysteries like this. And one question, where in the world are you watching from at this moment? Let's start our video. They say the will was found on a Sunday morning, folded, dried, and strangely warm, on the altar of St. Aldrich's Chapel in western Louisiana. No one saw who placed it there. No one claimed responsibility. But when the priest unsealed the envelope, his hands began to shake so violently that the acolytes thought he was having a seizure. Inside was the last testament of Edmund Hargrove, a plantation master known equally for his cruelty and his spotless public reputation. And in it, he left every acre, every dollar, every animal, every structure, every possession, to a slave named Michael. His wife, Margaret, received absolutely nothing. Within an hour, the church bell rang out of rhythm, echoing through the pines the way it did only when someone died inside the sanctuary. But no body was found. Only a trail of black dust leading from the altar to the back door, as though something had crawled out on its elbows. The Hargrove plantation had been hiding a secret for nearly 3 decades, one carefully buried beneath walls, fields, and the pious face its owner showed to the town. And as the news of the will spread, so did the fear. Because everyone who knew Edmund understood one thing. He was the last man alive who should have shown mercy. And yet, it wasn't mercy. Not at all. It was a warning. The kind that comes only when someone believes death is already at their heel. Michael had been purchased at 16 from a burned-out holding pen in Mobile. Before the Hargroves acquired him, nearly every plantation owner refused the sale, not because he was weak or ill, but because of something whispered among those who inspected him. He doesn't sleep. He only watches. Margaret hated him from the moment he arrived. The servant said she refused to walk past him alone, claiming his eyes followed her even when his head didn't. But Edmund developed a strange fascination, bordering on reverence. He assigned Michael no field work, no house duty, no labor at all. Instead, the master kept him close, as though the slave's presence protected him. The overseers mocked the peculiar arrangement, until the accident started. First was Thomas Elway, who whipped Michael once for refusing to kneel. 3 days later, Elway was found in the stables with his neck twisted so far around his face pointed toward his spine. The doctor called it a fall. No one believed him. Then came Rebecca Sinclair, a seamstress who swore she heard Michael speaking to someone in the abandoned chapel behind the east field, someone whose voice she could not describe without shaking. She vanished a week later on her walk home. They found her dress hanging neatly from a tree, but never found her body. Each time someone harmed, mocked, or threatened Michael, something strange followed. Not immediately. Quietly. Patiently. As if the land itself took note. Margaret begged her husband to get rid of him. Edmund refused. He said, "He protects this house. If he leaves, something older comes for us." People assumed he had gone mad. But the journal they discovered after his death, buried under a loose floorboard in the master bedroom, told another story entirely. Edmund wrote that he believed Michael wasn't born, but placed. That he had dreams of shadowed figures standing over the slave at night, whispering as if teaching a child to speak in a language older than land or river. Edmund claimed he woke several times to the sound of Michael humming in the attic, a song that made the walls vibrate and the air taste like iron. Worst of all was the entry dated June 3, 1846. "I saw my wife watching him through the parlor window. I saw her lips moving as though repeating what he said. When I called her name, she turned to me slowly. Her eyes were not her own." After that, Margaret refused her husband's touch. She slept in a separate room, ate alone, and spoke only when required. Servants claimed they heard her whispering with Michael late at night, though the two were never once seen alone together. Then, one night in 1849, everything changed. Edmund was found walking barefoot through the fields, muttering that he had seen a face in the well, his own face, but smiling in a way he never had. He roamed the property for hours until he finally collapsed at Michael's feet. The next morning, he locked himself in his study and wrote the will. He died 3 days later. Or rather, something stopped his heart. There was no disease. No external injury. He died as though snuffed out. When Margaret learned of the will, she didn't scream, cry, or faint. She simply said, "He kept his promise." And left the house forever. The town demanded the will be voided. They tried to seize the property. But each man who attempted to file a legal challenge suffered a bizarre and sudden tragedy, accidents involving machinery, horses, or inexplicable illness. By midsummer, every challenge was withdrawn. The plantation legally belonged to Michael. And this is where the story should end. But it doesn't. Because no one saw Michael leave. No one saw him stay. No one saw him die. When a group of surveyors attempted to value the land in 1872, they found the house empty, untouched, preserved, cold. Every door was open. Every bed perfectly made. And on the master's desk, illuminated by a thin beam of light through a cracked shutter, lay a single sheet of paper. The ink was fresh. The handwriting was elegant. The signature at the bottom did not match any known man. It read, "The debt is paid. The house stands. But she walks still." To this day, locals refuse to step on the property. They say if you stand outside the old Hargrove house at dusk, you'll see a figure in the upstairs window, neither man nor woman, neither alive nor dead, watching the fields like someone waiting to collect on an old promise. And if you listen carefully, when the wind moves through the pines, you might hear humming. Soft. Ancient. Patient. As though something is still on that land. Guarded by a slave who was never meant to be human. And a mistress who was never meant to be free.